It is a beautiful cloudy day in Cleveland. Welcome to Sharing a Bowl with, presented by Superior Pho. I am your host, Chris Wynn, and today we'll be sharing a bowl with director Joyce Pan Huang, who is the director of city planning of the city of Cleveland. Joyce, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Joyce. Cleveland is a budding city with so much new investment and positive energy coming in. Sherwin-Williams just moved their headquarters to Cleveland. The lakefront has had so much development in recent years. Where is most of your energy focused these days?
That's a great question. So, not all of our lakefront is developed yet. That is actually a major goal of Mayor Bibb, but also mine is to look at the lakefront areas that have not yet been developed, and that's namely downtown as well as on the east side. So, areas like St. Clair Superior and Collinwood. So, we actually really focused on the downtown lakefront right now, which is all gravel, all concrete.
Okay.
And we just feel that that is not the highest and best use for our beautiful lakefront. And not to mention, we just really believe that Lake Erie is a beautiful thing, um, that it should be considered its own stakeholder, even because it is 20% of the world's fresh water. So we really feel like we've turned our backs to the lakefront, and we really need to reconnect people to water again. So that's been a huge effort on our end. But outside of that, I'm really passionate about neighborhood planning and thinking about
Yeah.
other areas that, can grow in their identity, grow in development, that sort of thing.
Well, you started in Midtown Cleveland and you were doing tremendous work there. So how did this happen? How did you end up working for the city of Cleveland? Did Mayor Justin Bibb just sort of call upon you and say, "Hey, do you want to do this, but on a city level?" Or how did that
Yeah,
come
that's a
about?
great question. So I was totally surprised because I, had been with Midtown. We were doing a lot. We were working with Asia Town. We were working with the Huff community. We had just finished a huge neighborhood vision for Midtown as well. And then after the election, Mayor Bibb called me and pretty much was like, "You should apply for this job." So, I really thought about it a lot. I thought about it a lot. It was not a quick and easy answer for me. I had to really think about, you know, mostly my family
Yeah.
and how I would be impacted just from changing up my lifestyle in a pretty major way. But ultimately, what I really decided on was, I went to Midtown because I felt the call to serve, and even though this was just a enormous enormous call to serve, the whole city has got a lot of challenges. um, I felt like this was a time to serve, and serving the whole city was something that I reflected on a lot with my family, and
Yeah.
that was a big thing.
I'd
Yeah.
read, I'd read, I think you did an interview, and I'd read that you said actually being a mother was a really important part of your vision and the way you approach strategizing city planning. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, totally. So I am a mom of now a 5-year-old. So when I first started, she was probably 2.5. And um, I should add that I'm the first female director of the City Planning Commission here. I'm also the first mom, and
Like ever in the history of Cleveland?
in the history of Cleveland.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So everyone else had been men. I
Right.
mean, many of them were our fathers, but I really believe in the power of diverse voices in planning.
Yeah.
And I do think that women plan cities, mother plan cities makes a really big difference because we just approach cities really differently. As someone who had to work with daycare drop off and transportation issues, and even just walking around as a pregnant woman, I was like very aware of my surroundings and what my direct experience with like walking down a street or a sidewalk was like. And then when I had my kid, it was like, oh, yeah, we really need our sidewalks to work for us. We
Yeah, that
really need
makes
our
sense.
transportation systems to work for us because that's like your everyday lived experience. And so I really fundamentally believe that children have a right to live and to be in a city that they should be able to get around semi-independently, and that we should be thinking of them when we're building our city. So,
Do you think that your strategic vision as it pertains to accessible transportation and with consideration to being a mom rather, um, has that been well received, or have you had some pushback from
that's a great
people?
question. I think that any change is really hard for people. And we are a city that has been designed for one mode of transportation mostly, which is vehicles like cars.
Right.
And we depend on cars. We have cars. My family has cars. But if it were possible to not use a car, we would, right? And we've been able to do that by biking her to school some days when the weather is nice and things like that. But I think that our goal is not to eliminate cars entirely. That's not possible. I think our goal is to provide other ways to get around and make it safer to get around other ways, whether it's walking or biking or scootering or taking the bus, and to make it more convenient. So, with that, there's always going to be pushback. And I think that that's similar all across the whole nation, where people have depended on cars, and by taking away one lane, it feels like it's a drastic change. And so there has been some public pushback, but I also think that there's a generation of like younger people or young families who are trying to promote a different narrative, and they support some of those changes. So it's a very interesting mix of many opinions.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I get that. But you're not a native Clevelander, right?
Mm-mm.
So, um, where where are you originally from?
Yeah. So I was born in the Rochester, New York area
Okay.
in a suburb named Penfield. Yeah.
And do you think that your having grown up in Rochester has influenced your strategic vision for Cleveland at all? Or
Yeah. I think so. It's everything about how we grew up kind of influences us up in many ways. And maybe it's more that I was able to contrast my experience growing up in Rochester versus other places. So, for example, um, I grew up upper middle income neighborhood. My parents are from Taiwan,
okay,
and we lived in a suburb and needed pretty much a car to get around. Not only that, we were a small percentage of the population in that only 2% of our whole town was Asian American. And I think it was like 95% white, like my school district. So I think that dynamic also really shaped me in very significant ways, where being a very small minority or person of color in this area, like really kind of the sort of sense of isolation was greater. So you kind of are physically isolated because you are kind of in this home, in this neighborhood where you can't get around by yourself very easily without a car. But then there's also the social aspects where, you know, my parents didn't necessarily know a lot of the other kids' parents from sports or whatever like that. Um, and I contrast that a lot with my experience going to Taiwan, where my parents felt very comfortable kind of getting around. You literally can walk or take the train. The train comes every 90 seconds. It's safe, it's clean. And that is where I really kind of got exposed to a more urban lifestyle where you're like, oh, you can literally do everything you need to do
hmm,
within like a 10-minute walk. And so I think contrasting that really showed me that living in community, living close to things, being able to walk is how cities, that's why people like cities. And Cleveland is a place where I hope that that can really be true. And you feel like you belong because you have not just the things you need, but the culture around you that kind of excites you or is a reflection of who you are.
given that you're working on a way for people to utilize public transportation more effectively and being more considerate and mindful of folks who really use this on a day-to-day basis, not like, oh, I need to take this bus one time, but for working people and mothers, where this really, really matters. What is your timeline, or the city's timeline for carrying out these initiatives?
Yeah, so we recently, thanks to some really good work from our staff members, Matt Moss in particular, who's managing a lot of these strategic initiatives, 15-minute cities type stuff. Um, so there is a policy enacted now, which is called transportation demand management. And the idea is um, anywhere that is close to what we call transit-oriented development, or areas where it's close to really high-frequency bus or trains. Um, and high frequency is 15 minutes, which is actually not very fast,
Mm.
but is the highest we have here in Cleveland. Um, our goal is to support that public transit, I think, in a few ways. The first is by encouraging the private sector to invest in multiple ways of transportation. So if you want to build a new development project that is above 10,000 square feet, or if you're reusing a vacant building over 10,000 square feet, you would participate in this program where you don't have to put in a certain number of parking spots
Oh,
for cars, because there are all these requirements for parking that
right,
end up making our city look like Walmart parking lots,
right,
right?
right,
Like
right.
huge, expansive land uses that are just really inefficient. So instead of putting in the required parking spots, you can swap that out for different items like subsidizing bus passes for your residents, for putting a new bus shelter, for building bike infrastructure, even putting on-site daycare will get you like 1 billion points. Not literally 1 billion points, but you know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
Like you'll get a lot of points for that. And I think the idea is we're trying to incentivize private sector to help kind of fill some of those gaps
Okay.
with kind of these what we call last mile needs, where we want to create much more opportunity beyond just a single car. And that hopefully will help the transit corridors to
Yeah.
have a lot more users.
That makes a lot of sense because,
Yeah.
like, even right now, I have to take my child to daycare, and it's 30 minutes away.
Mhm.
Just because anywhere local is already completely filled up, they can't take any more kids, or it's the wrong time of the year, or maybe not the quality of childcare that I'm looking for. So that makes a lot of sense to incentivize that.
Yeah. And the other thing that we're really looking to do, which we have not yet enacted, but most of these transportation corridors kind of rely on people to live nearby. And if you were to look at those corridors that have the 15-minute buses, a lot of them have like used car lots and maybe small retail, but not a lot of housing. So directly on the corridors, you don't have a lot of people living there. And the federal government actually has this statistic that 20 to 30 units an acre will get you a transit supportive development.
Oh, really? Okay.
So 20 to 30 units is, a townhouse development, maybe a 3 to 5 story building. Nothing like towers. You don't need to be downtown to support it, but we don't have enough of that kind of housing on our transportation corridors.
Okay.
So that's the kind of thing that we're looking to change.
So as the city planner, you are trying to find ways to encourage that, subsidize it when possible, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And have developers build on transportation corridors.
Yep.
Interesting. What sort of subsidies are currently available, or incentives?
Yeah, incentives, we're actually kind of working on that wholesale as several different directors. So I'm not personally in charge of that project, but we are actually looking at different criteria to say, like, if someone wants city funds, then you have to, take a look at where you're located. Are you located near this transportation corridor? Are you building something that's going to benefit the community, like infrastructure, benches, things like that? Are you going to provide affordable housing? And that kind of incentive structure is what we're aiming to get towards, so that we can actually evaluate evaluate these projects.
Now I have to ask because we're actually in Asia Town and it's
Hmm.
personally relevant. But how much of that work is being done in Asia Town?
It's a great question. So, in Asia Town, one thing I'm really interested in looking at is this is like really wonky, but looking at our zoning codes because those are the regulations that tell you what you can and can't build. And a lot of it is industrial right now.
And it's really wonky in Asia Town too,
It's
right?
wonky.
Yeah.
It's wonky in Asia Town. And we also have a lot of families that live much more communally,
Right.
right? So you have more than two families living on a parcel. You have oftentimes four families in a parcel. And we want to support that. Like that's great.
Sure.
And so there's a lot of changes that we need to make to ensure that we can change that. I think the other thing is, our corridors could use a little love
Yeah.
in Asia Town, Payne
Yeah,
Avenue,
totally.
and Superior. So by addressing some of those zoning issues, we can encourage the type of development we want to see, whether it's housing or something else, make it easier to get that kind of stuff in. I would say the biggest thing that's coming through Asia Town is what's called the Superior Midway. Do you know about the Midway?
I don't think so.
What? Okay.
Yeah. Tell me
So
more.
okay, so the Superior Midway is this big concept about how streets like Superior Avenue used to be like streetcars.
Okay. Yeah.
So right down the middle, there would be a streetcar coming through.
Right.
And after streetcars went away in 1950, you just ended up with like a huge road, like 6 lanes right outside here.
Right.
And
Which people are speeding
yes,
down all the time.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. I actually used to live right on this street, 31st Street.
Right. Oh.
Yeah,
At Mueller, right?
Mueller. I used to live at Mueller, and I remember I could hear screeching tires at night. Unfortunately, I think there were some drive-bys, right? Like just things like that where there was like car crashes or screeching tires. And that's what you get when you have like a freaking 6-lane highway
Yeah.
coming down. So the idea is, what if we took those streetcar streets and turned it into a protected bike lane with trees and everything, right? So you might have seen these in some other cities where you have like a curb that separates the bike from other cars,
Right.
and it would kind of take away that middle lane and slow everybody else down a little bit. So that's a huge project. It's probably $30 million
Wow.
going from Public Square to 55th Street.
Is that something that's in the works or something that's being discussed?
It's in the works. So
Wow.
in the works being that they're designing it right now. So we need to get you connected because they're working on it right now. And it
Okay.
should be built by like 2026.
Wow.
So
Is that during your tenure or would you be out by then?
it depends if
Depends on.
the election
Oh,
happens.
the election. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, technically my tenure would be till end of 2025. But if we stay on, for example, then if the mayor wants to have me, then it would continue forward. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. And so I also read that you're building on former director Collier's Collier, building on his work, and your strategic vision is sort of framed around the foundation that he's laid. What are some of those initiatives that have, how do you say, like a longer timeline, so to speak? And are any of those strategic initiatives that he'd set forth going to be completed under your
Yeah,
tutelage?
it's a great point. Yeah, so what's really interesting is that planning directors are kind of like relay races. So we always pass the baton.
Right.
We're always building on each other, which is actually that's Director Collier's, what is it called? It's his analogy.
Okay.
So the Midway started under Director Collier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that project started under him. There's another big project called form-based zoning that started under him. And again, that's addressing our zoning code and making it much more just user-friendly and much more urban. So we're trying to bring that over the finish line right now in a few different neighborhoods with city council. But I think that there's a lot of big plans that started when he was here, Woodhill Choice being one in the Woodhill Buckeye area, the Buckeye Road planning that's been happening. Um,
Is that part of the Opportunity Corridor?
Opportunity Corridor is another one.
Okay.
It's a separate one, but it's
A
another
separate one?
one.
Okay.
And yeah, I think those are really starting to make progress and come to fruition. And certainly there might be things that we start that under my direction that will kind of live beyond as well. So those are just some of the examples that we've been working on.
So, do you mind if we talk about the Opportunity Corridor just real quick? What is the vision there, and what's the status of that vision? Where are we at?
It's a great question that everybody else asks about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Opportunity Corridor started actually as a vision a long time ago. Long time ago. There's a long history. There's a long history about that because originally there was supposed to be a highway coming through, especially through Shaker Heights. And back in like the 60s and 70s, all the residents stopped it. So that's why
Oh,
you know how 490 comes up to 55th
right.
before Opportunity Corridor, it just stopped.
Yeah.
That's because the highway was never finished. And so it's
Oh,
been this very long journey of figuring out, you know, how do you get people to University Circle? And it's been very hotly contested because the road was cutting through many East Side neighborhoods. It's a roadway that's heavily supported by the State Transportation Department, Ohio Department of Transportation, or ODOT. And it was hundreds of millions of dollars. And a lot of people were asking, why do we need a new road? We have lots of current roads. And so, you know, this was probably about 15 years ago when a lot of the visioning and planning started to say, okay, well, if there's going to be a new road planned, you know, how do we capture that road? So I would say like right in the thick of the 2010s was when Director Collier was really trying to get the vision going. And where we all landed was that Opportunity Corridor really is an area that had a few needs, right? The residents in the area want access to better employment, right? We needed sites for larger companies to locate in Cleveland because a lot of companies have been moving out of Cleveland. So we wanted to say, hey, there's an opportunity here for you to be very close to a really important roadway to have the transportation access that you need. And then I think is to really try to bring equitable development to the east side as you're kind of going from 490 all the way up to University Circle. How can we make this a place where there's more housing opportunities and there's more work-live opportunities? So now that the road is finished, you can see that there's a ton of vacant land still. But what we're trying to do is now it's a lot of the marketing and attracting the right types of users. So what we've done from our end, from planning's end, is that we've said, okay, we've said this is the core job zone. This area between 55th and Buckeye should be a place where we get hundreds of great jobs in that are accessible to residents. And we want to be really careful about what those jobs are, right? We want them to be higher wage, possibly manufacturing, supporting, you know, the biomedical areas that are close to the clinic. And we also want to see more housing, like close to 105th where the new Meyer is. That was a big part of the vision was, can we get a grocery store? Can we get housing? So there's market rate and there's affordable housing being built right now. And how can we get just larger corporations to invest too, to locate close to the Cleveland Clinic and university hospitals and Case Western where there's so much research going on. So I would say that it's really just starting.
okay.
We're doing a lot of outreach. We get a lot of proposals. Most recently, the company Canon, the Japanese company
Yeah.
Canon.
Camera company or lens?
Yeah, I think it's biomedical. Don't quote me on that. But they have like a biomedical imaging
Division?
division that they want to locate right across from the Meyer. I think they did a press release
Wow.
already on that.
That would be huge.
So yeah, that's huge. So that's the type of stuff we're really looking for. And it's going to take some time to attract the right users. Again, we don't want to just willy-nilly pick people, the first people that come to us. I think the second thing is that we are really putting an emphasis on design because oftentimes those institutional buildings or manufacturing buildings can be very boxy and uninviting, unwelcoming, especially to residents. So we put a lot of design standards in the zoning code to say, hey, you need to make it feel more natural and artistic, and you have to have a front door. You have to have a front door that faces opportunity corridor so that it can be much more inviting.
That's true because sometimes there are these industrial buildings and there's no front door. uh, and you're like, do I have to go around the building to get in or?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And it can be really hard when you're a resident and you're like, I don't know what that box is. Like,
Yeah, I don't know what that business does.
yeah,
I don't know.
yep,
Yeah.
it's down the street from me and I'm not connected. So those are the types of things we're really aiming to do.
So I grew up on Spring Road in Old Brooklyn, and on the eastern side of the what is that, the 176
Yeah.
bridge, there's like an industrial parkway, the Hinckley Industrial Parkway. But even if you continue along Spring Road to the other side of the industrial parkway, there are these old big boxy buildings, which are exactly as you described. Like you're not really sure what some of those buildings are about or what kind of businesses are in there. And I could definitely see that happening on a larger scale in Opportunity Corridor if you didn't have those zoning requirements in
Yep.
place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really interesting. So you're just starting. How long of a timeline? Like, I guess are you or the city expecting until it's filled with developers or tenants or what have you?
Great question. It's a little open ended, right? Because I think we want to try hard to get the right users in,
Yeah.
and that could take some time. But we have a big team that's working on the marketing and attracting the right users. It's not just the city at work, but there's other big organizations.
I was just gonna ask. So it's not just
Yeah.
public sector folks;
Right.
it's private sector as well, making this effort for outreach to bring in developers and tenants.
I would say private sector, but also nonprofit sector. So
Okay.
economic development organizations,
Okay.
Team NEO and Greater Cleveland Partnership and the CDCs. Those are community development corporations that are trying to be a bridge between residents and economic development. So there's a lot of people involved. There's probably dozens of people involved.
Wow.
Yeah.
And some of those folks are literally cold calling corporations and sending out RFPs or what?
Good question. I don't know the exact details of that, but
Maybe it's too
yeah.
technical.
Maybe a little technical.
Yeah, sorry.
That's
Sorry.
okay. Yeah.
Um,
But RFPs, trying to put together the right teams, entertaining the ideas, the visions that come forward to us.
Yeah.
Like people pitch ideas all the time, and I think someone needs to really work with people to make sure that it's a solid idea.
okay.
Yeah.
But you were doing fantastic at Midtown Cleveland. Why'd you decide to join the city?
It's a great question. Well, I think I'm very inspired by Mayor Bibb, and would have only taken this job if it were him, right? As mayor.
Well, tell me why.
Yeah.
What about Mayor Bibb or
So,
his strategic vision?
I just think that he really cares a lot about cities. He cares a lot about the experience. He's actually quite design focused too. Like he has a good eye for it.
Okay.
And he really wanted to support planning. He really wanted to support urbanism, right? So supporting, transportation, supporting the program I just talked about, transportation demand management. Like he was all about it. And we need leaders to, their vision to carry the torch. And so I really felt like he had the energy and has the energy to do the work and bring Cleveland to a larger scale, right? He's always out talking with other mayors, talking with the federal government, talking with the state government. And that is really important because for a long time, Cleveland really kind of took a back seat in a lot of the federal conversations. So
I see.
yeah. And, to your question about Midtown, right? Because that was really important work to me. That's something very close to me. Asiatown is a place where I lived. But I also felt like there was, it was time to pass the baton.
Oh, did you feel
Yeah,
like you'd?
I was starting to feel like that. And I can't really explain it. I think it was after Cleveland Walls, which was like a massive mural festival
Mhm.
that we put on, that I was like, I think we've put forth the foundation and it's time to pass the baton.
I totally
So,
get that.
yeah.
And sometimes you get that feeling like I've done what I've come to do, or I've done as much as I'd like to do at this point.
Hmm.
And then you had the good fortune of having Mayor Justin Bibb
Hmm.
knock on your door and say, "Hey, come on through.
Hmm.
Let's do this together." So, what about your? I guess is it your team or Mayor Justin Bibb's administration?
Hmm.
What about the folks with whom you're surrounded makes makes his administration maybe more agile or
Hmm.
more capable this time around, so to speak? Do you than maybe any other previous administration, or do you feel like you're moving in the direction that you want to go as quickly as you'd like to go?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, um, I can't speak for other administrations, having not been a part of it, but I think one of the key things is that the directors and the chiefs, we are all kind of lockstep and really supportive, really communicative. So we're always calling each other, always trying to figure out what's going on, and always coordinating too. I think
Yeah.
that's really important, because I think oftentimes the way I describe City Hall is like we're one body, but it's like we have 16 to 20 different organizations and we all have our different interests and focus points, right? But I think because we're constantly communicating, it makes it just much more cohesive and a lot of fun. Like nobody wants to be off by themselves and feeling disconnected from the mayor's office or other departments. So that's the biggest thing, is that I really love working across the teams. And then the planning department is also super fun. So I love working with the staff that we have. Um, there is one story that I'll share. I think it was the very first week I was there where we had probably staff from 8 different departments kind of coming together, and big project. And everyone started to introduce themselves. And it was the first time they had been in the same room together
Oh,
in many years. And so now that that's over with, like, okay, we broke the ice. Everyone's always going into each other's offices. We're all talking. We're all constantly calling each other. We're in meetings together. And so that's the kind of collaborative spirit that we're that's making us more responsive, right? So that's really important.
even I think outside your organization, the interconnectivity is really cool because we just had our guest, Dr. Kirsten Ellenbogen from Great Lakes Science Center, CEO of the Great Lakes Science Center, and she already knew who you were and said that you guys are already working on projects together, which I thought was really really cool because you guys. Uh, the Great Lakes Science Center. I mean, you can't even mention Cleveland without mentioning the Great Lakes Science
Mm-hmm.
Center. But um, it's so cool that she knew you and you guys are doing amazing things to improve the city. Are you allowed to speak on the types of things that you're working on together?
Oh yeah, we're working on the lakefront.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's a critical stakeholder in the lakefront project, and um, going back to that point about being connected, I think
Hmm.
that's really important. That's part of my personality too, is that I love meeting people. I love to get to know them. I kind of try to fit in the pieces of how everyone's connected. And I think there's a magic in that. So, I'm always excited when I get to make connections and put together pieces. Um, but yeah, she is part of the North Coast Lakefront planning effort. So
Okay.
really thinking about that downtown area and how to get more connected. to the lake.
And but how are you guys
Mm.
doing that together?
Well, we talk to each other a lot. We get her feedback. She gives us feedback, asks for feedback on certain things. So, again, very collaborative, a lot of communication. So, for example, we have what we call the 60% plan out there on the internet. It's called clevelandnorthcoast.com. If you go there, you can take a look at the plans that we have suggested.
Okay.
Includes, for example, the land bridge that connects from downtown over to the lakefront. You have a lot of different proposals that really come out of community feedback.
Oh,
So a lot of community members have made up to 5,000 comments.
with the CDCs as their representatives, or
Just direct feedback. So
wow.
we were out at like dozens of festivals and different meetings to collect resident feedback. A lot of them wanted festivals, wanted outdoor dining, a place to just relax on the waterfront. And, we, through our designer, field operations, really tried to put a lot of that stuff in the plan. So you have outdoor dining, you have a huge kids playground, like right next to the Great Lakes Science Center, right? Like just stuff like that that is really trying to hit as many audiences as possible. And, Kirsten was really critical in trying to make the connection between like what those uses are and how to support her, how we could even get some of the students that go to school in the Great Lakes Science Center really engaged and involved. So that's been really, really good.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I gotta mention we're a little short on time, and I apologize for that. But I want to ask you, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind in your role as the city planner?
Big question. Pause is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that going back to that whole identity about being a mom and being Asian American and thinking about what helps me feel safe and belonging in a space, I would like to see that for the whole city of Cleveland. And to me, that means you feel like your culture is represented visibly in your neighborhood through arts and culture and through the types of development that are coming to your neighborhood. You feel like you can walk in your neighborhood and take in your surroundings without feeling worried about safety. It means that you can get to where you need to go in a healthy way, right? Like you're not scared about getting hit by a car, or you're not worried about, if I bike here, am I gonna be safe, right? Like being able to participate in all of that. And I think ultimately it's like if we can see Cleveland begin to grow again, right? Begin to grow in our population, where grandmas can see their grandchildren moving back to Cleveland and raising their families here, I feel like we would be successful. And there are many different ways to get there, but that's like the big vision. The way that I really hope to leave a legacy is that we are going to do a citywide plan called Cleveland 2040. Or it might not be called that, but we're thinking about what Cleveland will be like in 2040.
Oh,
So we're thinking about our kids when they're 21,
yeah.
right? And they're thinking about Cleveland and what life will be like in Cleveland. So that's the kind of legacy, is like, as we plan for that, hopefully that vision will become into being. And I really believe, like I have a strong belief that if we have a vision, we can make it happen for Cleveland. Like I really deeply believe that. I'm
I believe it
convicted
too.
of that.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do is capture that vision and keep the vision, right? Like keep it going.
Yep.
And see if we can get there.
I mean, I feel like we're already starting to see some of those efforts and some of that vision coming to fruition. Just I feel like there's a lot of capital investment, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of companies that are considering us for their home, and I know Lincoln Yi in the Asian
Mm-hmm.
community just opened or is opening rather a huge facility, I believe, right in Opportunity Corridor,
It
or
is closer to East 55th Street in the
okay,
central neighborhood. But
okay,
yeah, that's like living wage jobs.
yeah,
It's making healthier lunches for kids,
yep,
and it's going to provide 200 jobs for residents in the area.
amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. And I feel like a lot of bigger companies are more seriously looking at Cleveland for those types of opportunities to bring their companies, you know, close to downtown, if not directly downtown. So
Yeah, I hope so. And if I can just drop another point in here,
yeah,
and this is coming down to the mayor and some of the really brilliant team members we have. The Good Jobs Fund is something that the mayor proposed through ARPA funds. So through partnership with City Council, we set aside $50 million
wow,
to prepare sites to attract companies, right? So the idea is we have a lot of vacant land, but it's often not ready. There's like weird utilities issues. It's maybe what we call brownfield, so it's got contamination in the dirt, stuff
right,
like that. So that fund is meant to like really get everything prepared. And we might not see things happening in the next 3 years, right? Like it's possible.
sure,
It's a long-term investment. So it's possible in the next 5, 10, 20 years that that $50 million is going to have a return
yeah,
by attracting those companies here. And I think that's kind of the theme of today is like we're trying to put together the
yeah.
foundations. We are trying to capture the vision so that we can make it real. And that takes time.
That is super cool. That's super cool because like if a big company from maybe another state were to look at Cleveland and say, hey, we're interested in building our headquarters here, but the land isn't where it needs to be, then they could maybe tap into some of that money into that fund and help prepare the land to make the cost of acquisition uh, make sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? And make their numbers make sense for
And
expanding
to
Cleveland.
move at their speed too, because
Yeah.
oftentimes, actually, what we want to do is prepare it even before somebody reaches out to us.
Okay,
So
right.
if we like it, we'll say, hey, this is ready for you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Um, Very important question.
Mm-hmm.
How did you find out about Superior Pho?
Oh. Okay, so I think this goes all the way back to when I first moved to Cleveland in 2007.
Okay.
So what, 17 years ago now?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I remember moving here, and when I found Asia Town, I was like, oh, thank God there's bubble tea. Like, like there's a space where I feel like I'm connecting with
Yeah.
my culture, right? And Superior Pho was one of the first places I came to eat.
Oh my
So I've
gosh.
been coming here for 17 years, Chris.
Wow. Wow.
Right?
You've seen the evolution of like everything here.
Yeah.
Even before we had this dining room, I think.
Really?
Yeah. The
Yeah,
green room.
like back in
Yeah.
there. And yeah, in my old jobs, I would come have meetings here
Yeah.
with everybody, and even before Midtown times. So yeah, no, I've been around. And honestly, I don't remember how I found out about it. I just feel like everyone was like, oh yeah, pho, go there.
Go there. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's superior.
Awesome. That's awesome. And when you eat here, what do you usually get?
Oh, good question. Okay, so I actually really appreciate that you have a vegetarian menu,
Yeah.
even though I'm not like 100% vegetarian, but the tamarind soup is so good.
Oh, do you get okay.
I
Yeah.
do. I do. It's a great option because it's vegetarian, it's tofu, it's kind of got that sour
Yeah.
tamarind flavor that I really like. So that's like my
Ah.
go-to actually. Otherwise, I mean, I pretty much eat everything. The pho, the
Rice
bun,
dishes.
the vermicelli
Oh,
dishes.
vermicelli dishes. Okay.
My daughter likes the rice dishes, so
Nice.
yeah.
Very nice. Well, good. I was gonna ask, how do you usually take your pho? But if you're all over the menu, then
I can
even
I
better.
can still answer the pho.
Yeah.
So I usually like the dak biet, the everything,
The special, yeah,
the
everything.
special.
Yep.
And I love to put in all of the toppings: basil, the what are those beans?
Yeah, the bean
The
sprouts.
bean sprouts,
Yep.
jalapenos.
Okay.
Put it all in, and I only add just a little bit of sauce because I really like to taste the broth.
The broth. Yep.
I have to taste the broth.
So
So
you're actually one of the first who's deviated from the tradition of like having it plain Jane, no sauce, no added accoutrements. Yeah, yeah. Of
what?
all the guests that have been on the podcast so far, you're
Wow.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I want all the toppings. I love the basil. I love the jalapenos. So
yeah.
yeah, the
Usually,
lime.
usually I'm just doing sauce on the side,
Yeah.
a touch of lime, and then basil. No bean sprouts.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, the bean sprouts are interesting. I'm kind of like half on that one.
yeah.
Yeah.
We steam them too. I mean, that's one way to get them.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of people like steamed bean
Yeah, I
sprouts.
might want to do that then.
Yeah.
Oh, secrets. I'm learning the secrets. I have to say, I also get the soybean milk.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, what's the brand called again?
Um, I don't remember. Yo's maybe.
Yo's, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah.
gotta go with the Yo's.
Yeah. We actually get a special kind of the Yo soy milk. We get the Vietnamese edition or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, which has I think a little bit more sugar and added pandan leaf.
Okay. Oh, yeah, so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you know Kiwi, Wong Pen
Yeah,
from.
of course.
Yeah,
From Tai Tai.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a
Shout out Kiwi.
shout out Kiwi. We love you, Kiwi.
We love you.
Whenever we get Yo's, we're always like
Yeah.
sending each other pictures, like soybean
So
Yo's Club, soybean milk club. So
How
yeah.
fun.
yeah,
We should, you know what we should do? We should take a selfie together and with the
send
soy
it to
milk.
Kiwi.
Yeah,
Oh
with
yeah,
Kiwi.
let's do it. She'll be so happy. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I know you're tight on time, so I don't want to monopolize any more of your time. Thank you so much, Joyce, Director Wang, everybody for joining us on the show. You'll be able to hear other episodes just like this on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, all the major platforms. So please check us out, and everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you.